hosted the event. The group have also performed at the Waterfront Hall, Castle Ward Opera and the West Belfast Festival. They meet apparently twice a week at Tullymore Community Centre in Andersonstown for dance, drama and mime classes. And now each of the VIPs will begin to speak. We'll hear first, we understand, from the new First Minister, Ian Paisley. He'll be followed after his speech by Martin McGuinness. Then Tony Blair and Bertie Ahern will speak to the assembled crowd before departing.
Prime Ministers, distinguished guests, and all who are here. There are some words from Holy Scripture, and it says, "We know not what a day may bring forth." If you had told me some time ago that I would be standing here to take this office, I would have been totally unbelieving. I'm here by the vote of the majority of the electorate of our beloved province. During the past few days, I have listened to many very well-placed people from outside Northern Ireland, seeking to emphasise the great contribution they claim to have made in bringing this all about. However, the real truth of the matter is rather different. If those same people had only allowed the Ulster people to settle the matter without their interference and insistence upon their way and their way alone, we would all have come to this day a lot earlier. I well remember the night when the Belfast Agreement was signed. I was wrongly arrested and locked up on the orders of the then Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Amazing to see some Secretaries of State and some ex-Secretary of State here today. It is a pleasant thing to see that they're not going to lock me up, that I have my freedom. It was only after the Assistant Chief of Police intervened that I was released. On my release, I was kicked and cursed by certain loyalists who supported the Belfast Agreement. But let me say today very strongly, that was yesterday. This is today, and tomorrow will be tomorrow. Today, at long last, we are starting upon the road. I emphasise starting, which I believe will take us to lasting peace in our province. I have not changed my unionism, the union of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom, which I believe is today stronger than ever. But we are making together a declaration. We're all aiming to build a Northern Ireland in which all can live together in peace, being equal under the law and equally subject to the law. I welcome the pledge we have all taken to that effect today. That is the rock foundation upon which we must build, and we intend to build. Today we salute Ulster's honoured and unageing dead, the innocent victims, the gallant band, members of both religions, Protestant and Roman Catholic, strong in their allegiance to their differing political beliefs, unionist and nationalist, male and female, children and adult, all innocent victims of a terrible conflict. In the shadows of the evenings and in the sunrises of the mornings, we hail their gallantry and heroism. It cannot and will not be erased from our memories. Nor can we forget today those who continue to bear the scars of suffering and whose bodies have been robbed of sight, robbed of hearing, robbed of limbs. Yes, and we must all shed the silent and bitter tear for those whose loved ones have not yet been returned. Let me read to you the words of Deirdre Spear, who lost her police officer father in the struggle. Remember me, my sculptured glens where crystal rivers run, my purple mountains, misty in the sun, My coastline's little changed since time begun. I gave you birth. Remember me, though battle-scarred and weary I abide. When you speak of history, say my name with pride. I am Ulster. In politics as in life, it is a truism that no one can ever have 100% of what they desire. They must make a verdict when they believe they have achieved enough to move things forward. Unlike at any other time, I believe we can now move things forward. Winning support for all the institutions of policing has been a critical test that today has been met in pledged word and deed. Recognising the significance of that change from a community that for decades demonstrated hostility for policing has been critical in Ulster turning the corner. I have sensed a great sigh of relief amongst all our people who want the hostility to be replaced with neighbourliness. The great King Solomon said, "To everything there is a season, a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace." From the depths of my heart, I can say to you today that I believe Northern Ireland has come to a time of peace, a time when hate will no longer rule. How good it will be to be part of a wonderful healing in this province. Today we have begun the work of planting, and we will all look for the great and blessed harvest. Thank you.
I am very proud as an Irish Republican who believes in the unity of Ireland to stand here with all of you today. And I wish to very warmly welcome the Taoiseach Bertie Ahern, the Prime Minister Tony Blair, and all our friends from around the world whose encouragement and support helped us reach this momentous day. There are people here from the United States of America, from Palestine, from South Africa, from the Basque Country and many other parts of the world. Tá fáilte mór romhaibh go léir. Many people in this hall today played an important part in our peace process, and many others, unfortunately, could not be with us today, and I want to send to them our warmest thanks. We will continue to rely on that support as we strive towards a society moving from division and disharmony to one which celebrates our diversity and is determined to provide a better future for all of our people. One which cherishes the elderly, the vulnerable, the young, and all of our children equally. Which welcomes warmly those from other lands and cultures who wish to join us and forge a future together. A society which remembers those who have lost their lives. Last Saturday and Sunday I spent some time with families in County Tyrone who have lost loved ones. They and many others throughout our community have suffered greatly, and they continue to suffer as a result of our difficult and painful past. So we must look to the future, and we must look to find the means to help them heal. We must also focus on the practical. To build, we need the tools, and as I have said, we look to our friends on these islands and beyond to provide the practical support we need. As joint heads of this executive, the First Minister and I pledge to do all in our power to ensure it makes a real difference to the lives of all our people by harnessing their skills through a first-rate education system, caring for our sick and the best health service we can provide, and building our economy through encouraging investment and improving our infrastructure. We know that this will not be easy, and that the road we are embarking on will have many twists and turns. It is, however, a road which we have chosen and which is supported by the vast majority of our people. In the recent elections, they voted for a new political era based on peace and reconciliation. On the evening of the Assembly election results, I received a phone call from a 100-year young woman, Molly Gallagher from Ardra in County Donegal. This is a very active woman, very alert, watches the news every day, and she told me that she was very happy with the election results and that she was looking forward to seeing Ian Paisley and myself together. So I am sure Molly is watching us today. Hello, Molly. As for Ian Paisley, I want to wish you all the best as we step forward towards the greatest yet most exciting challenge of our lives. Ireland's greatest living poet, and probably the greatest poet writing in the English language, a fellow Derryman, Seamus Heaney, once told a gathering that I attended at McGee University that for too long and too often we speak of the others or the other side, and that what we need to do is get to a place of true otherness. So the office of the First and Deputy First Ministers, I think, is a good place to start. This will only work if we collectively accept the wisdom and importance of Seamus Heaney's words. Tá lan obair le déanamh again. Since March 26, much work has been done, which has confounded the critics and astounded the sceptics. Like these talented people from Sky's the Limit, who entertained us so wonderfully today, and I think also inspired us, we must overcome the difficulties which we face in order to achieve our goals and seize the opportunities that now exist. This and future generations expect and deserve no less from us. Gura míle maith agam.
First Minister, Deputy First Minister, Taoiseach, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great honour to be with you today, and can I first of all thank Sky's the Limit for a wonderful performance. You really inspired us. Thank you so much. Just had a conversation upstairs in the First Minister's office, which the First Minister began by saying, "I'll explain this," he said. "There's you, a young man of 54, just going out of office, and here's me, a man of 80, coming in." Must tell you something. Today, the elected representatives of the people of Northern Ireland have taken responsibility for the future of Northern Ireland. It's what people voted for, and it's what's happened. But that simple statement does not do justice to the true significance of what is happening today. Because today marks not just the completion of the transition from conflict to peace, but also gives the most visible expression to the fundamental principle on which the peace process has been based. The acceptance that the future of Northern Ireland can only be governed successfully by both communities working together, equal before the law, equal in the mutual respect shown by all, and equally committed both to sharing power and to securing peace. That is the only basis upon which true democracy can function, and by which normal politics can at last, after decades of violence and suffering, come to this beautiful but troubled land. You know, normal life and normal politics can seem a small ambition to anyone who has not lived through the abnormality of a society living daily on the edge. And for years, Northern Ireland was such a society disfigured not just by the news of the latest atrocity, but also by the ancient hatreds and deep suspicions that had shaped its image and political character. Look back, and we see centuries pockmarked by conflict, hardship, even hatred among the people of these islands. Look forward today, and we see the chance at last to escape those heavy chains of history, to make history anew, not as a struggle between warring traditions, but as a search for the future, shared, held in common, and bound by goodwill and peace. That is, in truth, what this process has achieved. I would like to pay tribute to the work of my predecessor, John Major, during whose time we saw the first steps towards peace. I pay tribute also to the work of previous Irish Prime Ministers, and to Peter Hain, the Northern Ireland Secretary, all the previous Northern Ireland Secretaries, and to Dermot and his Irish counterparts. I would like to pay special tribute today to the contribution of the present Taoiseach. During the past decade, relations between Britain and Ireland have been transformed. Today we are partners and we are friends. Recently at Croke Park, Ireland and England played each other in an atmosphere unthinkable, even a few years back. Wrong result, mind you, but magnificent sentiment. That, in no small part, has, in my judgment, been due to Bertie Ahern. No other Prime Minister, I suspect, has shared as many cups of tea with me as we've toiled through the long hours of negotiation. But Bertie has always been there, willing to surmount yet another obstacle. By his actions, he's shown the willingness to engage, to understand, and to reconcile. Bertie, thank you. However, as he and I both know, it is the leadership here in Northern Ireland that has been the indispensable prerequisite of success. John Hume showed such leadership when he first talked to Gerry Adams. David Trimble did in a remarkable way when he supported the Good Friday Agreement and led his party through the frustrating process of trying to implement it with Seamus Mallon. So too did the representatives of the Centre, Alliance and the smaller parties who added their voices at crucial moments. And so too have the many friends of Northern Ireland around the world, not least in the United States. And so too have, of course, the First and the Deputy First Minister who stand beside me today. It is no secret that Ian and I have not always agreed, and that probably has been as much relief to him as it's been to me through the years. But I lost count of how many times I was told he would never accept sharing power. But he told me, in the right circumstances, that he would. He said that he wanted to see Northern Ireland at peace and would not flinch from doing what was necessary to get that peace on the only terms he thought would endure. I believed him, and he has been true to his word. On behalf of all the people of our country, I thank him today. Likewise, of course, I recognise the leadership of Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness. History has cast Republicans and British Prime Ministers in very different camps for very obvious reasons. But again, long ago, I lost count of the times I was told they would not or could not commit to peace. But from the first meeting I had with them, I believed that they were genuine. They had not forfeited one jot of their belief in their political cause, but had the foresight to see that only through politics could it be constructively pursued. However rocky the road, they held to it. Today would not have happened without their leadership, and I thank them for it. But my final words are for the people of Northern Ireland. You have lived through the pain and the suffering of the past. Many of you each day will pause to remember someone very close and very special who you lost. And for many, the pain of that memory will be as real today as it was the hour and the day they were told of that loss. You will never forget. For some, it is impossible to forgive. For the rest of us, we too need to remember what it was like in order to marvel at how it has changed. Northern Ireland was synonymous with conflict. It was felt to be intractable. The Troubles, not so much a dispute as a fact of life. Irreconcilable differences. People felt that it could not be done, indeed sometimes even that it shouldn't be done, that the compromises involved were too ugly. Yet in the end, it was done. And this holds a lesson for conflict everywhere. To define the right political framework, since only through politics can come peace that lasts. To get the external forces, especially the governments, working in alignment with those internal forces striving for peace. But above all, to persevere, never to give up, never to accept that the true will of the people is conflict when they are given the chance to live in peace. The leaders played their part, but ultimately it was the people that showed the leadership. They set the terms, they held us all to them, and they gave the final imprimatur. And in doing so, they did a power of good for optimists everywhere. So on this historic day, my final thanks is to them, the people of Northern Ireland.
First and Deputy First Ministers, Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, members of the Legislative Assembly, friends from the United States and across the world, distinguished guests. At the outset, I'd like to join with others, as you did in the Assembly this morning, in expressing from the Irish Government our sympathies on the untimely passing of George Dawson last evening. To his many friends across the islands, our thoughts are with his wife and family and his party colleagues, and to you, First Minister, and everybody in the Democratic Unionist Party, we send our sympathies. Here in Belfast, ladies and gentlemen, on this day we mark the historic beginning of a new era for Northern Ireland, an era founded on peace and on partnership, an era of new politics and new realities. And between British and Irish, between nationalists and unionists, we're now agreed on a vital consensus on our future together. And the events that we've had the privilege of witnessing are a powerful statement that peace is not impossible and conflict is not inevitable. We cannot undo our sad and turbulent past. And none of us can forget the many victims of the Troubles. But we can and are shaping our future in a new and better way. And in doing so, we can't put the divisions of the past behind us forever. Northern Ireland is now a place of peace and promise. I warmly congratulate the First and Deputy First Ministers and their colleagues in the Executive as they take on the duties and responsibilities of office. We look forward to working with the new Executive. And for our part, we promise that we will do so in a true spirit of partnership and friendship. Working together, we can make life better for everybody. Challenges, yes, but challenges in a climate of real hope. And today, relationships on this island and between Ireland and Britain stand transformed. There are many people who have played a part in the vital process, and I congratulate every one of them today. As Prime Minister Blair has said, the many predecessors that we both have had, and John Major and John Bruton and Dick Spring, and particularly Albert Reynolds, John Hume and David Trimble and Jerry Adams, and all of the people we've negotiated with, the Kennedys and Ted, who's been always a great friend through a long period, and I thank them. And I thank all of the politicians that have been involved, those who were involved in the early talks back a decade ago, my colleagues, David Andrews, Liz O'Donnell, and my colleagues now, all the Secretaries of State that are here, the Taoiseach and Dermot Ahern, our Foreign Minister, and all of the Cabinet who have worked with us. But I thank all of the other politicians here, and particularly all the politicians in Northern Ireland who've worked so hard and so long, and all those I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 10 years. But the people of Ireland know that this would not have come about without the commitment and dedication of one person in particular, Prime Minister Tony Blair. This was not a process that promised quick or easy rewards, but he has been a true friend of peace and a true friend of Ireland, and for that we express our heartfelt thanks. I thank him not so much for the tea, not so much for the castles that I had the pleasure of spending so many times in, but for the true determination that he had, for just sticking with it. For 10 tough years, he has spent more times dealing with the issues of the island of Ireland than any person ever could have asked any other person to do. Tony, thank you for that. As we step, ladies and gentlemen, from this place of history, we must be resolved that this should be the last generation on these islands to feel the anger and pain of old quarrels. We've had it for hundreds and hundreds of years. We know the unique and delicate balance that binds this process together. Our task is to protect and nurture what has now been achieved. 86 years ago, on the 22nd day of June 1921, when the open storm and King George V said, and I quote, "I appeal to Irish men to pause, to stretch out the hand of forbearance and conciliation, to forgive and forget, and to join in making for the land which they love a new era of peace, contentment and goodwill." End of quote. This is the spirit in which we assemble today, to stretch out the hand of conciliation and to renew the call for a new era of mutual respect and peace. I wish you all well, and thank you.
Well, that is the end of today's formal proceedings. The Prime Ministers and the new First and Deputy First Minister will mingle with the crowd now. Remarkable words there, time of healing, said Ian Peasy, and warm tributes from both Premiers to each other. Well, with me in the studio, I have two people who were involved in previous administrations in some shape or form. Jane Morris of the Women's Coalition, very welcome, and Ivan Cooper, who was involved going back, I suppose, to 1970s, a civil rights protester involved in the Sunningdale and others since then. Jane, I mean, just coming to you first of all, Women's Coalition is no more, but do you still feel optimistic about today's events?
Absolutely. I mean, just watching the Assembly itself was fascinating because of the difference now compared to then. Back then, 98, 99, 2000, with the devolution, there would be guffawing and words that were inappropriate, and the Speaker's duty, or the Deputy Speaker's duty, was to keep order. I mean, today I was amazed to see that, there was order, there was dignity, there was respect. It was all there. It was really, I could be optimistic, definitely.
Maybe your replacements will have an easier job. And Ivan Cooper, just a couple of historical notes. I mean, on this day, the 8th of May 1974, the UDA put its weight behind the forthcoming general strike, the Ulster Workers' Strike, and of course that saw the end of Sunningdale. The following year, on the 8th of May 1975, was the first meeting of the Constitutional Convention. You were here then. What would you say to somebody who said at that time, 8th of May 1975, in 22 years' time, you'd be witnessing Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness ruling Northern Ireland?
Well, I would have said to go away and get their heads examined. But I can tell you one thing, immediately after that convention first meeting, which was held in the Great Hall, it wasn't held in the Chamber, the first committee appointed was a committee to draw up the new arrangements for the Assembly. And I accompanied Ian Paisley on a tour of European capitals to look at various types of structures of organisations of assemblies. And I remember very well that on that day, whenever we flew to Amsterdam, he forecast to me that he would be First Minister, he said Prime Minister of Northern Ireland. And I believe that he has always harboured an aspiration to be Prime Minister of Northern Ireland. But if you had said it to me 22 years ago, I would have said absolutely impossible.
And I doubt at the time he was predicting that he might have his deputy, as he calls him, a former leader of the IRA in Derry.
Yes, well, the thing you've got to remember here is that Paisley said constantly never, never. And I recollect on a number of occasions when I met Martin McGuinness, he used to rebuke me for being involved in a storm at Parliament. So it is a transformation, amazing transformation.
The times are changing indeed. Well, we're talking about Derry. All the action, of course, is here at Stormont today, but the effects of this new assembly will be felt right across Northern Ireland. So let's go to Londonderry now, where Sarah Travers is there on the historic walls.
Indeed, Jim, yes, these walls date back to the plantation of Ulster. They're 400 years old, and people in Derry obviously very keen to listen and watch all the events happening at Stormont today, because in fact, you know, inroads to peace were forged really here in Derry. My guests now have been working tirelessly over the years. Jeanette Wark, you're a Protestant community worker based in an interface area. What are your views and feelings today?
Well, actually, I'm really delighted that we are now on a momentous day here for Northern Ireland, and also it sends out a signal of great hope for young people in particular. We have a very positive future now ahead, and we should all be working together towards that.
I mean, you are based in the Fountain Estate and gates are locked there at night. There is still trouble and a lot to be done, would you say, Jeanette?
Oh, there's a lot to be done yet, you know, and it's just a matter of chipping away. But we actually are sowing the seeds of good community relations at the Fountain. And Friday, for instance, we planted 2 rose beds, young people from the Bogside and young people from the Fountain, and a gesture of goodwill. And that was before today, and we felt it was very fitting to do that.
Dennis Bradley is also here, a former priest and indeed a former vice chairman of the original policing board. Do you think there's a lot still to be done, Dennis, or are we there?
You're never there in politics. What's next is a question always in politics, and after today it's what's next, and it's obviously about better relationships, and I think that some of those seeds have been sown today, and I think they will grow because I think the people want it, and I think that as usual, the politicians are leading. But I also think this is a day not just for Northern Ireland, or indeed for Ireland, but also for England, for Britain, because this is one of its oldest conflicts. This is, you know, this has been going on a long, long time. And British soldiers, English soldiers, Welsh soldiers, Scotch soldiers have died on these walls and on these streets. And I think that there is a great hope, and I think that those who have worked at politics, who have actually seen that parliaments are substitutes for civil wars, actually have seen a day come about where that's true, because people are now taking their office. They're moving into a situation whereby they're saying we don't want to kill each other anymore, and the remaining difficulties we will work out politically. We will argue, we will tussle around these things, and economics will underpin all of this. But this is a new day, not just for Ireland, it's also a new day for the British-Irish relationship.
What about policing, Dennis? Because that was one of the big stumbling blocks to get to this stage today, to get Republicans to actually sign up to policing. And you suffered greatly personally with that ambition.
Yeah, well, many people suffered around that, and policing has always been a very big difficulty for Republicans, in the sense that once you recognise policing, you recognise the political institution. So Republicans had to face accepting policing and accepting the politics of that Northern Ireland is now settled for a period of time and evolution, and politics will take care of it and not violence anymore. And policing is obviously a big issue, not just here but everywhere in the world. How do you police a community properly? How do you get involved with the community? How does the community get involved with policing? And I think that we owe a bit here to Chris Patton, another name that's well known in British politics, for the contribution he made to this, and I think he set a model which is now being copied across the world.
Dennis Jeanette, thank you. Well, another community that are hoping for a bit of stability from today is the business community. This is the busy Shipquay Street, and right up at the top is, allegedly, the world's oldest independent department store, Austin's, and its manager and owner, Declan Hassan, joins me now. Declan, how are you feeling about everything today?
Well, very, very positive, Sarah. I mean, this is a fantastic day for Northern Ireland. Today we thought would never come, and it's more or less a dream come true for people involved in business as well as the wider community.
You've opened the doors through some of the blackest times. Just remind people what it was like operating a business in the Troubles.
Well, in the 70s and 80s in particular, this was really awesome. Very difficult for people to do their basic day-to-day shopping here. We had the army barriers, we had the day-to-day threat of bombings and so forth, and it was really tough getting through each day, and it was an achievement for many people, and that's basically how people lived. Now it's a totally transformed existence here in the city, and we're looking forward to the future.
Now, what message would you be sending to the new ministers up at Stormont today? What would you like to see for the business leaders of the city?
Well, we're looking for a big investment in this. This is the second city of Northern Ireland, and we're looking for a lot more effort in the city area rather than the outlying areas. There have been a proliferation of out-of-town shopping developments all throughout Northern Ireland. That's actually bad news for most city centres. So that's the sort of message that we're trying to put out to the minister responsible for planning.
Now, there will be people sitting watching televisions all over the world today, seeing very positive images of Northern Ireland. Would you say that's a